Hi, Todd.
Hey, good evening.
Hey,
Afternoon for me, but evening for you. How you
yeah,
doing?
not that much. It's still sunny outside, so it's not so much the evening. Yeah, I'm fine. And you?
I'm doing well. Just at work, taking care of some business. Just finished lunch actually. So-
Okay. I'm I'm just okay. I'm cutting the sound, of the YouTube direct live broadcasting because I'm hearing twice the same scene
Oh yeah,
every two
so
seconds, so it's a bit disturbing. So yeah, I'm incredibly happy to have you there. It's an honor for me. Because first of all, you are a singer who counts a lot for me, and also because you're an interesting character. As we can see, you are here in your office. You have your, I'd say, ordinary life on the day, and on the night you turn into the singer of Riot 5, which is one of. It's interesting because Riot was it's a very old band.
yeah, very. Yeah.
It's a very one of the
50 years next year.
oh my God. And and though in Europe, even if the band has been very influential, and I think that I even think that, for example, Thundersteel had an influence on Judas Priest's Painkiller. Uh, I'm pretty sure of that. So
I've
the
heard
band,
that before. I don't know if it's true, but I've heard it.
and I think that you were very influential, but at the same time, it is as if the band went at the same time a bit under the radar. So the Riot's career is a bit paradoxical because there are many people, musicians, and even in the press that um, consider that band as good with incredible musicianship and a very impressive career, but at the same time, it never had the career of, namely Iron Maiden or
Hmm.
Judas Priest. And so, yes, it's also very interesting to have you there for that. The first time I met you for real was a very special moment for me. But the best was your concert because your performance there was really flawless. Live performances are not exactly the moment one can lie about his skills. It
Not too
really,
easily.
yeah, and it really was something to behold. And I highly suggest the people who have not had the opportunity to see Riot 5 live yet to buy tickets to your next shows because I think there's a tour
Yes.
um, coming in a couple of weeks,
In May.
month
Yeah.
in May. So you start in May, and the album, the new album, will be released in on the 10th of May.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, it's been pushed back a couple times, but apparently it's going to finally come out. We have actually three kind of songs released so far. So,
Yeah, and I hope the album will be released before you go on tour.
well, yeah, that was part of it. It was originally February, and then they moved it back to April
Yeah,
12th.
it was my birthday.
Yeah.
Originally, the album should have been released on my birthday,
See,
but
we planned it for that way, but
yeah,
record label. But yeah, the most recent I heard it's moved out to May 10th, and frankly, I've never been given an explanation as to why it's moving out, and I'm frustrated by it, but whatever. But yeah, our actual first show of the tour is May 8th. So, so
okay,
although we just played a couple shows in the US and don't tell anyone, but we had the CDs with us, so we went ahead and sold them
yeah,
at
yeah,
the shows. So
yeah,
don't
okay.
don't tell the record label though.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm absolutely sure they don't know. So let's start. The questions here are not closely related to your last album, but more generally, they are about your relationship with music and singing, because here it's a channel for singers, and I want to interview singers who have something to say about their practice and their art. And the first question is very natural. How did you start music?
I don't really necessarily come from a musical family. My mom really loves music, but she doesn't play an instrument. And my dad, music to him is just something that's in the background, but I remember as a little kid, because my mom and dad had 4 kids in 4 years, so we were all quite close in age
Okay,
and a good sized family. And I remember when we would take trips and stuff like that, that we would be singing along to 8-track cassettes in like this old car they had. Um, and I remember my mom having a varied collection. There would be some country and singer-songwriter stuff, but there was some rock and roll. I remember having like Deep Purple and the Rolling Stones and stuff like that too. So,
okay,
um, and so I don't know. I just remember that and everybody singing along. And then when I was quite young, singing in school. I think I was only about 5 years old. One of the ladies told my mom that, one of my teacher told my mom that she thought I had a good voice. And
incredible.
I mean, I kind of
Same
understand.
same story here.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of understand where she's coming from because when I listen to little kids sing, sometimes you'll hear kids that are really on pitch or on key.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, wow, they have a really good voice. You can tell. Whereas some kids can't seem to find it or whatever. And
Yeah,
so,
I
yeah.
think that it's been studied. I think being able to sing on pitch is something that um, develops slowly from 4 years old to 9 years old.
Hmm,
So,
interesting.
but it's really rare to have kids that can sing right on pitch at 4 or 5. So they notice it.
Yeah, yeah.
The
That,
music
that, that
teacher.
Yeah, that must have been it. Because yeah, it was in kindergarten and they would play piano and kids would sing along. And so later on, then my mom, because she always loved piano playing and stuff, she, had me take piano lessons when I was 9 years old. And I think I took piano lessons when I was 9 to 13. But back then I wasn't disciplined with the instrument and I didn't want to take theory and I just wanted to play everything by ear and I didn't want to count. I was kind of
Do,
lazy.
do you
Um,
know why I'm laughing? Because you just um uh, it was exactly the case for me. Exactly the same story. The woman at the kindergarten said to my mom that I was singing really well and right on pitch, and she suggests my mom to um, make me have lessons, music lessons. Then after a couple of years, piano lessons, and theory was boring as hell. And
yes.
after a while, I just quit.
Yep. Same here.
A- and when I discovered rock and roll and hard rock, I wanted to play the guitar and um, to play that kind of music, but not piano anymore. So it's it seems to be a common story.
Yeah, and I think what happened to me is so my oldest brother, there were like I said, there was 4 kids in 4 years. I do have a younger sister who's 13 and a half years younger than me, but she came later. When I was my oldest brother was in a band and he played guitar and he took lessons for like a half a year, maybe whatever. I don't know. I don't remember how long because he started when I was quite young. Probably about the time I started taking piano, he started taking guitar. And then he was one of those guys that was really good at playing by his ear. So like he would just
Okay.
hear what was there and he'd played enough rock that he knew how to hold his hands and knew what the chords were and stuff and the keys. And so he just really picked up on it well. That always impressed me about him that he could just listen to stuff and learn how to play it, which I was common for good guitar players, but for me that was always unusual. Um, and with him being kind of the musician, I was kind of the lazy singer, I guess. I didn't have to really learn that much about music per se because I would just listen and sing along and write lyrics and vocal melodies based on the music he was writing. So it really wasn't until he and I stopped working together when I was 26 years old that I actually said, I want to learn how to play guitar. So I
Okay.
actually studied music theory more and how to put together a key and what chords are in the keys and all that jazz. And so I kind of learned a lot, and I've continued to learn actually because later on, then I got into recording choir pieces and it gave me an appreciation for harmony. And then I was like, well, how do they put together harmonies? Because like I'm not one of those people that can just listen to it and automatically find the harmony. I mean, sometimes I can if it's obvious, but so I literally like for my solo albums and even Riot stuff, but Michael helped me with it. I'll go through and kind of map out what I'm singing and the chords that I'm playing, and then find out what's, what are the harmony notes that I want to sing. And I literally map them out. I'll make a piano guide, and then when I'm singing along to record the harmony part, I'm singing along to like a piano guide, so I can make sure I'm doing a real nice proper harmony. But that's stuff I've learned how to do more recently in my 40s and 50s.
Okay.
So it's kind of like you never stop learning, so to speak.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting because you felt that at one point you needed it to be better.
Yeah,
That's it.
this will sound really stupid, but when I was 26 years old, my wife now, we've been married almost 25 years here this fall. She was just my pen pal at the time.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I have read the story. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So she was my pen pal. She was in India. And believe it or not, part of my motivation for playing guitar was that I felt like I wasn't a real musician because
Mm.
I felt like I was only a singer. But I had musical motivations, but I couldn't translate them into writing a song. And so I remember feeling like I didn't want to have to her to find out that I wasn't maybe a real, this sounds so stupid,
Yeah. No,
but
no, it's not.
as a 26-year-old kid, there was a part of me that didn't want her to find out I wasn't a real musician. So
Yeah,
I
but
started taking guitar lessons.
that's I really can relate to it, to the feeling of illegitimacy. The fact that as a singer or as a, I would say even as a rock musician, you sometimes have the feeling that you are a bit a subpar musician,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
and sometimes you just want to feel a bit more legit,
yeah,
um
yeah, for sure. Well,
and
especially
I
when you're
can
around
understand.
people that are really schooled in
Oh
it.
yeah, yeah,
Like Mike Flint's from Riot, the guitar player. I mean, he has a degree in music, and
yeah,
so does Frank.
yeah,
Frank's the drummer, and he's this big, gruff-looking dude, but he's a really sensitive, intelligent man. And man, is he know a lot about music. It's
oh yeah,
amazing some of the stuff. And so yeah, for me, I'm around other people like that. I did some local performances recently with a woman, Amy Petty, who's she's trained. She can sing opera, she can sing pop, plays the guitar really well, plays and sings. She knows she can orchestrate, music, writes parts for an orchestra, all that. And you see that stuff, and you just, you're kind of blown away. Like, wow, I'm just a singer. What's up without,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, wow.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I have played with people also who are incredibly schooled, and I admire them a lot.
Yeah.
So sometimes I feel myself a bit, um, a bit weak in front of them. So
Yeah, yeah.
I also had to make my way through it, and I think that is something quite normal and natural when you really love your art and you just first of all want to be better at it and to
Yeah.
have a better understanding of the principle underlying it, but also because you love this art, you want to, I don't know, it's just interesting.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is something really interesting, and it allows you to, I don't know, to, I think it made me a better listener too.
Yeah.
So it's cool because I like listening to music. So
Well,
uh,
I think it's natural for people, no matter how much education you have and no matter how good everyone else thinks you are, it's natural for people to have some level of insecurity in it. And that insecurity can be like in some aspect of their performance. Like for me, I don't necessarily have a lot of insecurity, like certainly on stage with Riot, right? I know the back catalog well, it fits my voice well. I don't really have a lot of insecurity there. But when you just say, "Hey, Todd, go get up on stage and sing this song with that band," now all of a sudden I feel really insecure because I'm not prepared. Or if it's like, "Oh, Todd, okay, it's live. I need you to go sing a harmony." Like I say, I always sing the main. I don't really sing harmonies unless I'm recording and I got a guide, so I'm not real good. And so all of a sudden, even if the harmony's obvious, I can start freaking out because I'm the kind of person that I gravitate toward that's why I always hated singing in a choir. I mean, I love the sound of blended voices, but when someone's next to me singing something else, I tend to gravitate to what they're singing instead of singing my part. So some of those things, they make me feel really insecure. But certainly, you know what I mean too. If you're around other musicians and they're like, "Oh, we're in this key, so you should play this," you should do
Yeah.
it, and you're like, because you don't know the music theory quite as well. You're
Yeah, yeah.
just like, okay. But I think everybody has some element of that
Oh yeah.
where they feel like their limitations come in.
Yeah. And that's good to have limitations sometimes.
Well, it's good
Uh,
to be aware of them anyway.
yeah, yeah. Uh, um, so if I understand well, you started with your brother
Yes.
to play music. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
I did. I actually I sang like in school they would have things called academic track where
yeah.
there were academic things, but there were also like artistic things. And but I remember being 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, singing in school performances. Back then, I had like a really high voice. I remember one academic track I was singing "Tomorrow," which is the theme to the Annie, the musical. It's tomorrow, tomorrow, I love you tomorrow, but an octave higher than that.
Yeah.
And I would just belt it out as a boy. I went through puberty really late. I didn't go through puberty till I was about 15.
Okay.
And so what happened to me, it was kind of funny because I eventually grew into where I was old enough. My brother thought, hey, I need a singer. Why don't you be in my band? And so I was 15 years old when I first started performing live. So I'm actually coming up on like, about 9 months or whatever year from now, I'll be about 40 years since I performed live for the first time
Oh,
with a band. I mean, it's amazing to think it's been that long. But when I first started performing with him, I had gone through puberty, and my really high voice was kind of gone. I mean, I still could hit a higher note, while some people might consider it a higher note, but and I'm not trained, so I can't even tell you what I'm talking about. But
mm,
basically, my head voice, I had not learned how to sing head voice. So listening to someone like a Jeff Tate hit big high notes, I didn't have that capability yet.
okay.
Uh, and so it was about the time I was so I was only in the band for about 6 months at that time, and then I got out, and that's about the time I saw. It was 1984. I saw Kiss, Queensryche open up for Kiss on a tour, and I remember seeing Jeff Tate hit these notes, and I remember just thinking, "Oh my God, like this is so amazing!" And then listen to Tony Harnell from TNT and
Yeah,
Eric
yeah.
Adams from Manowar, all the typical people that we all love so much, and um, but I remember being on this quest. So I would just drive around in my car singing along to cassette tapes of these bands and Warrior and Malice and all these different bands,
Yeah. Those
Pretty
great
Maids
bands.
and whatnot have you. And um and I remember talking to other singers like, how are you, because there was this other kid, he could sing the Queen of the Reich song. And I'm like, I remember going talking to him, oh my God, how Johnny Carden was his name. He ended up moving to Arizona away from me. I don't even know whatever happened to him. And I remember like, God, how are you able to do that? And then there was this other guy, and they would talk to me about head voice, but like nobody could really tell me what it was. And
Yeah, yeah.
I remember there was a local guy named Duffy who played drums in the band when I was singing it, but he could hit like that
Yeah.
high Eric Adams note. And I was like, how are you doing that? And it was so funny. It was all this self-exploration. And then all of a sudden one day, I don't even know what I did or how I did it, but I was singing along to the beginning of Take Hold of the Flame by Queensryche. And when it came to that first note where it goes up nice and high, I just went up to hit it, and I hit it. I was like, oh my God. And what's so stupid is I remember running home to my brothers and saying, oh my God, I can hit this note. And my other older brother, Rick, he's closest to me. I remember saying, hey, John, Rick, come on up. And we went up to the bedroom that Rick and I shared, and Rick put the Queen, he said, put the Queen of the Reich song, put Take a Little Flame on. And I sang the beginning and then hit that high note. And they just both looked at me. And you know how brothers would be like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
But incidentally, my oldest brother was like, yeah, it wasn't long after that he wanted me back in the band again. And that's when we recorded the very first Harlot
Yeah.
EP called Virgin Wings, and then later on recorded our album 25 Gets a Ride and all that. And you could tell I'm screaming my head off on those things. So
And yeah, and I listened to them prior to the interview a couple of minutes ago, and the Jeff Tate influence is
pretty obvious.
undeniable. Yeah, pretty obvious. Yes, but it's interesting what you say here because I had a question by a good friend and actually a very good singer too. Uh, and he sends me that question. You started your career in '86 in Halle. Given the context of the time, how did you find the resource and let's say the intel to work on your voice on your own? And I think it was a good question because
Yeah, yeah.
uh, uh, given the context, I remember quite well when I started seriously singing. Probably after 2000 and even after 2000 I had managed to find a couple of tips but couldn't get rid of the vocal tiresomeness and we already talked about that together. My
Mhm.
own way as a singer was a bit more difficult because as I had a very huge problem with tiresomeness, I couldn't sing more than 3 or 4 songs in that kind of style, and then my head voice was just blown. So I couldn't reach those high notes, and I had to rely on very on resources on I took lessons and the level of vocal pedagogy I had I think was up to the task. But at that time in the 80s, I don't know exactly what were the possibilities for a singer, especially a young one, a young man wanting to learn how to sing hard rock and metal.
Yeah, there really wasn't much. Like so I think when I was late 15, maybe 16s, I think I started driving. I was taking lessons. There's a local teacher, she
Okay,
actually has a PhD in it. Her name is Julie Meyer, but
okay,
she's an opera singer. And
yeah,
like literally I went to her and I put in a tape of TNT Knights of the New Thunder and I played some of Tony Harnell's really high singing. I'm like, I want to know how to do this.
yes,
And she was like, "Well, let's just start with some scales and just see where your voice goes and all that." And I took lessons from her for like 6 months. We talked about breathing. I even had a recital performance, stuff like that.
okay,
But um, I but she never told me like to access head voice, this is what you do. And I don't know
okay.
if she didn't know or and I still know her to this day. I just talked to her not that long ago. She's a wonderful woman. Retired now, but she she never told me. And so then what happened is I ended up discovering it on my own. And then I just
Yeah,
kind of stopped taking lessons.
yeah,
Now, the one thing I would say is, like I said, I would talk to a couple dudes and say, "Hey, how are you doing?" Because like that one guy, Duff Tingland that I was telling you about, that could hit the high note in the Man o' War thing, he was a pretty decent singer and could hit these high notes. So he was kind of trying to explain it to me. But one of the other things he did is he talked to me about earplugs.
oh yeah,
Earplugs in your ear. And then when I was playing at Blondie's in Detroit, it seemed like somebody might have talked about, but I started doing that where I would, because I had a lot of trouble. I'd go out, we'd go play clubs in Detroit when I was 18, 19 years old, and we'd be doing these harlot sets. And my God, yeah, I'm exactly like you. I mean, you couldn't hear yourself in the monitors because my
mm,
brother and the guitar players, I always wanted to be so loud on stage. They would bury you. You really couldn't hear yourself. And yeah, 3/4 of the way through an 8 or 10 song set, your voice is getting shot.
mm,
And I was actually flabbergasted. I found like a really old videotape of Harlot playing Blondies in Detroit, and I was kind of amazed at how bad I was. Like I was listening to it and thinking, "Oh my God, this," because I was thinking, "Oh, I remember it fondly, thinking I was slaying the place," and I remember people being impressed with me with two things. One, I had lots of hair. So, and down in Detroit, a lot of times they would call it a salad. Dude, you got an awesome salad. I don't know why, like they would call hair salad, but that was never a thing for me. but then I would scream real high. And back then, to be able to
Yeah.
scream real high like that was impressive to a lot of people. Um, but yeah, I couldn't maintain my voice. So I really struggled with it. Like there was nobody to tell me how. The earplugs started to help me. But for me, it was just an evolution.
Yeah.
After that, I also, like around 91, I did the bar band thing where we would play like three 1 hour sets a night and sometimes 4 or 5 nights in a week.
Okay.
Um, and you just had to, you had
Oh
to,
yeah.
but then we weren't doing all what I would call really difficult stuff. When you're
Yeah. Yeah.
doing when you're doing Billy Idol, last night a little dancer. Okay, I mean, well, you don't have to worry about your head voice for
Yeah. Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so for me, it was like this notion of just experiencing live performances and slowly experimenting with my body and what to do and what keeps it and all that. And I feel like I still learned a lot when I started playing out with Riot too, because we started heaping on more shows and what really helped me too is because when I first started with Riot, I was wearing well before I played with Riot, I started playing with my Harlot again, but just as cover tunes. And by then, I didn't want any hearing damage. So I started wearing earplugs in both ears. So I
Okay.
learned how to do that. And that helped. The only thing that hurt you is what's really important as a singer is hearing the voice in your head, but also hearing some ambiance around you, or at least it is for me, because the ambiance around you gives you that sense of what I would call volume.
Yeah.
Whereas the voice in your head, when you plug your ear with an earplug, that's more of a quiet in your head. And
Mm.
so you want for me, I have to have a balance of both. Like I can do it with only the one in my ear, but I really have to control myself or else I'll damage, I'll start to lose my
Okay.
voice. I'll
Okay.
push too hard. And so,
So
uh, so nowadays, what I do, so when I got in Riot, I was working on that, and then we were going to do a tour of South America, and Frank, the drummer from Riot's like, dude, you really need to get in-ear monitors. And
yeah.
so I bought in-ear monitors. I tried it one night with it in both ears, and I just didn't like it. So I tried it in just one ear and then an earplug in the other, and that's the way I've been doing it ever since. So
Okay.
I like it. But I only put myself in there because the band's so damn loud. I don't really have to.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a nice tip
yeah.
because I met singers who have different strategies for their monitoring system, and this is very, very important because there's the feedback loop between mouth and ear is uh, it can be that is something you can't fight against. You have a way of working, a way of hearing yourself, and your brain just calculates the balance of your voice
Yeah.
with
Yeah, and how hard you
that.
need to push.
Yeah, that input, and it's something that is largely unconscious. So maybe you can master it and manage to be in control for 5 minutes, but afterwards, if the balance is not good,
Oh yeah.
it won't work.
It's really hard. I have shows with Riot now and then where I'm not hearing, like my right ear is just an earplug, and that's where I'm hearing what I would call the ambience of the room, and I'm not really hearing much out of there.
Okay.
Um, and that becomes really weird for me. And actually, just recently, I had a new experience because I'm going to play some local shows and do some of my hard rock stuff
Yeah.
here in my hometown, Saginaw. And so I'm working with a guy who used to play guitar in Harlot, in the 90s. His name's Todd Wallraven, and I'm going to work with his band. And well, their band is very modern. They're very cool. They do a silent stage where everybody's wearing in-ear monitors. But what's weird for me on that is I only put my voice in the in-ear monitor. I don't want anyone else's voice. I don't want drums. I don't want guitars. I don't want anything. That's with Riot because I can hear all the stage volume.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now, if it's a big stage, I don't mind a little bit of drums in the wedges and stuff so I can keep time. Um,
Yep.
but but what's weird with this new experience is that it's there's no no there is no noise, there's no ambiance like at the rehearsal. So after the first rehearsal I said, can we turn the PA on just so I can have some ambiance, because it was really weird. I tried putting two earplugs in, and I don't know, it's weird for me to be all in my head. I just don't I don't know, I don't know how to describe it, and I probably could get used to it, but I'm just so not used to it that I need to have. Although funny thing is, I did have a guy mention to me one time that one in-ear monitor is really bad for you because supposedly there's something about you get off balance with your ears or something. I don't know, but it's not that I'm not hearing my voice out the other ear. It's just not as direct of a signal as you would with the in-ear monitor, you know.
Yeah, sometimes there are people who can't sing with ear monitors, and as far as I'm concerned, I noticed that there's sometimes something a bit weird with headphones or ear monitors. They sometimes induce me to be slightly off pitch, uh, and
I've heard
uh,
that before.
mm, I really it's really weird because when I listen back to the things I'm for example recording, I notice that I'm a bit under the pitch, and it disappears as soon as I record with actual monitors.
Hmm,
So that's
interesting.
weird. That's really
Yeah,
weird.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I haven't noticed that so much. I think for me, like I said, it's just there's yeah, like certainly recording and live to me, it's almost like two different worlds.
Oh
When I'm
yeah.
recording, how do I describe it? I don't want to say I'm not as concerned about maintaining my voice. I
Hmm.
like I push harder when I'm in the studio.
Yeah, because you we are choosing. There's a good friend of mine. Maybe he's watching the the interview. Tony Linker is an incredible singer and vocal coach, and he often says that you often have to choose between expressivity and sustainability.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Uh, and in studio, the balance is not the same because you need to record something that will last uh, for for eternity.
Yeah, yeah.
And so you want it to be kind of, how could we describe it? A kind of idealized um, version of yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
In life situation, you're more concerned about the fact that maybe the day after you have
Yeah, well,
another
yeah,
show.
here. Yeah, coming up in May, I mean, I have 11 shows in 12 days. I do five, I have a day off, and then I do six in a row. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I'm really, freaked out and concerned about it, you know. I mean, I've been successful with it before. I've done like 8 shows in 9 days, and I've
Okay.
been successful with it before, but I'm gonna have to be very careful. Like my problem is I I totally understand and respect the fact that singers need to cut corners and do some things to help maintain their voice. I totally get it. It's just hard for me to do it. Like I really want to try to hit every note and there's a couple that I've cut out of, Riot songs here and there where it's just something in the beginning where I'm like, oh, whatever, I don't
Mm.
um, like the beginning of sign of the Crimson Storm, they got this thing, oh my God, what have I done? And he does it and he screams it real high. And I'm just like, whatever. I don't need to do that. But yeah, I try to hit all the notes. And so, that's so for example, and I'm not bashing on Jeff Tate at all because
He's
obviously,
a legend.
yes, he's a legend. I'm a disciple. So I'm
Yeah.
not saying, but I just saw him perform live in
Yes.
Saginaw a week ago. Like he performed at this club a week before I performed there with Riot. There was about 600 people there, put on a great show, and did all Queensryche songs really, some older ones like NM156
Yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff like that, even Queen of the Reich and all that. But obviously, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, he sounds incredible," and he does. His tone and everything, he sounds great. And he was in the midst of 14 days in a row too. So keep this in mind. This all in context. Um, he, but I know the songs really, really well, and so I know where he's altering the melody and bringing stuff down
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I know from singing along them which parts are really hard,
Yeah, yeah.
obviously where I would have trouble singing it because you know how on songs you have call and response on a chorus, and if you try to sing them both, you just get vocally tired. And obviously he's got it set up so that the band and the crowd sings part and he sings. So I'm not knocking him at all. What I'm saying, he's doing intelligent things to
Yeah,
try
yeah.
to make it so that he can continue to sing at a
But
great level and not damage his voice.
but
And
I think that Jeff Tate he comes from a period when he was not in such a high vocal
Hmm.
fitness.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it kind of recovered from a long period of not being able to, and also being almost denying he was a good singer. I remember having read an interview of him saying, I'm not singing the high notes anymore because back then I was already unable to do them. But when you listen to the live albums, or the live in Japan, it's on
Hmm.
YouTube, where
Yeah,
he sings "Take Hold on the Flame," or
yeah, yeah.
and it's he was just a monster. He was a demon back then,
Yeah, yeah.
vocal
I
vocal demon,
watched him. I
and
watched him. And I've been to shows where he hasn't hit all the notes. And I think what happened to him is, and I see it, I mean, I'm only surmising. I don't know
yeah,
him at all. Never, well, I met him when I was 18. He came to my brother's in-store and talked to him, and he was smoking a cigarette at the
yeah,
time. And I have a picture of me with him, and he's holding a cigarette. And I remember saying to him, my God, why are you smoking? And he was like, yeah, I need to quit, you know.
yeah.
So I don't know him at all, but I think being in a band, I think that he got burned out
Oh
on
yeah,
it. And so that, because I remember there were interviews. I remember listening to an interview with him one time where he's like, "Oh, we're not metal. We never were. We used to listen to the Thompson Twins. We just caught a wave and wrote it and all."
mm,
It was almost like he disavowed metal, and I remember being very irritated by that because to me, he's like in the pantheon of metal
yeah, yeah.
as far as singers. I don't
He was,
literally
he was
gods.
literally he was, but yeah,
And
I agree
I
with
think
you.
he, but I agree with you though. I think he kind of recovered from
Yeah,
that. Like I think my, and I, like I said, I don't know. I'm only surmising, but I think that when that whole dust up happened with him and the rest of the guys in Queensryche, I think it was a bit of a wake up call to him because he was doing they were doing some strange stuff, having burlesque shows and
yeah, yeah,
weird stuff going on, putting out some albums that just really didn't know what they kind of music they wanted to play. And I think that after that happened, I think that's when he realized, hey, I have a legacy here. And
mm,
as much as I potentially can grow, like just because you like a hamburger doesn't mean you want to eat a hamburger every day, right? And I feel like it's the same if you're a musician, you like I love heavy metal, but it's hard to express myself that way all the time. That's why I have other outlets where I can express myself in other ways. And I think, with I believe Jeff Tate went through the same thing, but I think now he's back to the point where it's like, he really appreciates that
yeah,
legacy and he's more willing to give the fans what they want to hear instead of fighting it.
yeah, yeah. It's something that you meet in other artists live. So the fact that they kind of gained success through doing something and getting burnt out at doing it again, again, and again and again. After a while, it's easy to understand why you can maybe uh, hate it.
Yeah, yeah.
Come to a point you just want to switch genre and do something else, absolutely different things
and
because
and 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 I just think you need
you're
to be
fed up.
careful how you communicate that to I don't
Yeah,
want to say I don't know if necessarily love the word fans, but the people that listen to you and like you have to be careful how you communicate that. Like to me, if I put out a pop album, like if I put out one of my solo albums and it's just my first one was just a love letter, letters to India. It was just a bunch of love songs. My wife, very mellow.
yeah,
Then again, I didn't release it on a metal label. I just put it out and said, well, here it is. It's just
yeah,
light pop. If you don't want to listen to it, you don't have to kind of thing. I mean, and then I didn't go do interviews where I'm like, oh, I hate heavy metal.
yeah,
I mean, it was just like, okay, well, this is another side of me.
yeah,
And but obviously, sometimes people communicate and do things and then maybe they regret it later. But
yeah,
I think it
probably,
comes
yeah.
down to how you share. Because I mean, to me, it's very natural for someone to wanna, you know,
Yeah, and
want to
I
do
have a
something
couple
else.
of questions about that because we are on topics that are very varied and very interesting in that regard. First of all, back to the live rendition of the songs. You are currently releasing a new album, and I know that you are in charge of creating the vocal lines with maybe the help or the inputs or of the other members, but you are in a touring band, which means that you will have to sing the songs you create. Do you work on your vocal lines so they are more live friendly, or you just follow the inspiration and and do whatever you have to do to sing them, because sometimes you hear singers, and I'm not touring just
Yeah, yeah.
as much as you. I have a couple of concerts here and there, but I never think about the live shows. So sometimes I have to sing things, and I almost regret having
Yeah,
written
yeah.
these things because they are pretty bitchy to sing. And I say, okay, next time I'll be more.
Conscious of
Uh,
that. Yeah, with Riot, obviously with my solo material, yeah, I'm thinking of all the vocal melodies, and I actually have a similar feeling with that because these songs I'm going to play locally. And when I look at my Sonic Healing album, I have a song that's called Like No Other. That's, I think it has a Jeff Tate sound to the vocal line,
mm,
like an Empire era Jeff Tate. Not that I was purposely trying to do that, but in hearing it afterwards, musically and everything, it gives me a little bit of that feel. And then also, there was another one called Running After You. And both of those, I just sang them. The melodies came to me, but then the guys are like, yeah, well, okay, we're going to sing those live. And I remember Todd, the guitar player fellow, saying, well, we should do Like No Other. And I remember thinking, oh my God, that's going to be pretty tough to sing, And so yeah, I think like you, when you're in the excitement of the moment of creating a line, you just tend to do. Now, I will say one thing: there are times when I hear something, um, and then I go try to do it, and I just can't produce it well in the
yeah,
studio.
it
Um,
happens too. Yeah.
just like I'm like, man, God, I can hear this note getting hit, but especially like to me when there's a change when you just or something,
Yeah.
like whatever. I don't know. Like, we had something like that on the Riot. It was the end of a Riot album, and it was just a little ad lib that I was trying to put in. And God, I had this thing in my mind. I thought it would be so cool, but every time I did it, it just sounded kind of clunky. And so I ended
Mm,
up just cutting it out. Now
yeah.
with Riot, Donnie and Mike definitely have a lot of thoughts about vocal melodies.
Okay.
Mike will just write a guitar line, not so sing, but then I have to interact with him because then like Donnie, a lot of times when he writes the vocal melody, he'll do an octave lower. So he'll just be like, like that. And then I'm like, hey, Donnie, that sounds cool. But when I move it, I said, I don't sound good singing it there. It doesn't sound like I have energy.
Yeah.
And when I sing in an octave higher, it's
Yeah.
like in the stratosphere.
Yeah.
So I have to, I have to try
From
to
F5 to B5. Yeah.
yeah. So I have to like transpose it somehow. And
Yeah.
but yeah, the interesting thing is I literally just went through it. So we have a song, the lead song off our new album is called Hail to the Warriors. We opened up with that song. And then we also played Field of Fire and Love Beyond the Grave live just last weekend. Thursday and Friday. And so yeah, I was kind of like, oh, I got to sing these live for the first time. We'll see what it's like. But I really didn't seem to bother me. I think what usually happens is the biggest problem that I have live is breath. It's breath space. And sometimes when you're
Mm,
recording, you don't leave enough breath space because in the studio, you and I both know you can punch in, you can do alternate tracks, you can do all this little trickery stuff. But then when you go to sing it live, you're like, oh my God. Like one of the funny songs that's really, people would never guess probably which songs are the hard ones to sing for me in a Riot set. So like there's a song that we play called Take Me Back. It's on Unleash
mm.
the Fire. And believe it or not, that song's kind of hard to sing because it just kind of keeps droning in this certain area, take me back. And it's like,
It
and it
never
just keeps going
stops,
and going.
and it
And
never
it
stops. Yes.
yeah, it's tiring. And that one's tiring. Another one that you have to be really careful of is the song Restless Breed, which that's by Rhett Forrester from older Riot. But they say Restless Breed a lot. And then he holds it, breed, and that E pronunciation, a lot of people don't realize that the E pronunciation is very tough on your vocal cords.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to open it up and go E, and see E, you gotta, and you just got to be careful. I have to be very conscious of how, because I found myself after singing that song a couple times thinking, oh man, my voice is feeling a little whipped after that song.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The famous E.
Yeah. Well, actually, what was funny too is we played the Kiss cruise so a little over a year ago, right?
Yeah.
we played it in the fall, but not the fall that just passed by, the one before that. And we played the Kiss Cruise, and we had to play 3 shows. And the right before the third show, I caught a cold, and I was horrified. It's certainly the worst performance I've ever had with Riot. I was just having a lot of trouble getting notes to come out. As I started out feeling like, oh, okay, I'm fine. But after about 5, 6 songs, my voice started to tank, and I was not able to hit notes. I was not able to hit notes. And what was interesting, I was having to, not to tease Vince Neil, but do the Vince Neil where you hold the microphone out to the crowd and skip words and whatever trick you can pull, right? But I do remember, like, I kept telling the guys, cut it, just be done. And they would just keep playing another song. And I'm like, oh my
Oh,
God, this is killing me. But what funny is when we got to the end of the set, Thundersteel, I was still able to hit the really high Thundersteel note. So what got destroyed
yeah,
for me was somewhere in the middle. It wasn't the
in the
real high
middle, yes, yes.
below, and it was
From
stuff in the middle.
generally it's from the G4 to C5,
Yeah.
D5. That
Yeah, right
is,
about where you
and
get that break point or whatever,
yeah,
you know?
and afterwards it's upper it's easier and under it's easier, but it's still half an octave that is unsingable.
So
So
so I so I somehow pulled it off because I remember there was even some musicians from the other bands that were like, "Oh, you sounded great." I'm like, "Really? Oh my God, it was
uh,
horrible." But what do you do?
and yes, the touring can be hard on the voice, as you say. We both know that there are no secret to keep a voice in perfect working condition on tour. But did your I mean, did you experience difficulties, and what would be the so you told us you experienced difficulties with this cold. What would be the advice you could share to the singers listening to us when it comes to voice management while touring? Have you got
Yeah.
routines, things you do
Yeah,
usually
yeah,
to
for
yeah?
sure. For sure. I would say first and foremost, during the live performance, you have to get in that kind of Zen state where no matter what is going on, you don't push too hard, because all you need is one night of pushing too hard, and you can really do a lot of damage. So that to me is the first thing. Just really control yourself when you sing. Know what it feels like to sing properly. Even if you're not hearing it loud, don't worry and trust that it's out there and all that kind of stuff. So to me, that's number one.
Okay.
Afterward, don't talk. Do not, I mean, I'm not saying don't talk at all, but don't talk loud. And then when you do talk, make sure you put your voice up inside your head instead of speaking through your throat. Just like doing this interview, you don't want to sit and do a lot of throaty talking. And so
Mhm.
for me, I like to heal the voice. When I'm done, I like to just be quiet. If people want to talk to me, I just don't talk over loud music. Don't talk in the
Yeah,
car. Try not to talk
exactly.
on the phone. If you do talk, people lean into their ear, get real
Mm.
close to them. Unfortunately, people probably think I'm weird, but anytime I'm talking after a
Yeah,
show,
yeah,
let's
yeah.
get real close. Don't stay up late. Don't drink a lot. Stay healthy, get a lot of exercise, and
Yeah, and
eat decent foods.
the exercise. When we met as a fanboy, I wanted to take a picture of us two, and what struck me was that despite being older than me, you looked as the young, charming prince, and me as the old frog. So, looking looking at you, it seems obvious that you are quite athletic and that you work out probably more than me, by the way. I tend to be a bit lazy in that regard. So, how would you rate the benefit of fitness on your vocal skills performance?
Well, I mean, I think that what happens is, like, okay, so I weight train, and I've weight trained for 35 years, three
Yeah.
times a week. So I've just pretty much never stopped unless I was injured and had to take a break. And I do rock climbing, which is kind of a weight training.
Oh,
I
yeah.
I, I walk at least 10,000 steps a day. To me, I think what it is like, you can imagine, basically a lot of singing is breath control. And I don't know it for a fact, but the way I would equate it is like, the better shape you are in, the more you're not out of breath, the more because when you can't control your breath well, that's when you start to do silly things with your voice while you're singing. And I think that's where potential damage comes
Yeah,
in.
if you run out of breath,
Yeah.
I agree with you, and that is something that I also say to my students and the people I work with is that in that regard, I'm not that much of an example because I'm a bit lazy, but I do recognize that with the highly well functioning heart and lungs, you are less prone to blow your voice. It works better, and I think it's quite logical.
Yeah, I mean, and to me, it's all kind of part of that equation. I mean, one of the tough ones is sleep. It's amazing. So, I mean, this tour we have coming up, this 11 shows in 12 days, we're on a shuttle bus between shows, and they're telling me, well, there's no trip longer than 6 hours. But basically, I'll have to be up probably and leaving by, 8 o'clock in the morning every day. And that's really tough because I can't fall asleep after a show. We had a show in Pittsburgh. After clearing out, getting done, and getting back to the hotel room, it was almost 1 o'clock.
Yeah,
I read my little daily devotional and read a magazine to try and get a little sleepy. And I laid down at 1:15 to try to fall asleep. And I'm laying there. It's 1:15. I still don't fall asleep. I finally fall asleep. I wake back up, and there's something in your brain when you know that you have to wake up early that it's just I don't know it. And that so I ended up with less than 3 hours of sleep, and then I had
yeah,
to drive 6 hours the next day for another show. And man, I'm sure hoping I won't be putting up with that in May because I'll just have to try to sleep in the shuttle bus and stuff because it's really hard to function. We
yeah,
did a tour with Primal Fear, where I opened up at Primal Fear. We opened up for Primal Fear, and I only had to do like 45 to, I don't even think we did more than an hour. So 45, 50 minutes every night. That really helped. But we did 25 shows in 30 days. So we were doing consistent runs, but we were on a tour bus. And so my routine was I would hang out in the dressing room until I had to leave, which is usually by about 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. From there, I'd go get on the tour bus. I'd take a melatonin, which is a natural
yeah,
sleep,
yeah,
and a
yeah,
Dramamine, so I wouldn't get motion sickness, but that's kind of a sleep aid too. They make you drowsy, and I would lay down and sleep, and I wouldn't get off that bus till like 11 o'clock the next day. So I was getting like 9 hours of sleep every night. It really, really helped because when we played our show in France, I had a cold. I had like a sore throat or something kicking in, but I was able to keep singing, and I never really affected I mean, I had to be careful, but it never prevented me from singing and doing what I needed to do. So sleep is absolutely essential. So
yeah. And do you warm up before singing or before the shows, or do you
I
keep it
used to
at?
yeah, I used to be really meager with my warm-ups. I didn't do a whole lot. I don't necessarily do a ton now, but like a couple summers ago, when Riot started playing out again, I noticed my falsetto wasn't coming back, and I went
Mm,
I went to the ear, nose, and throat doctor, and he checked me out, and then he sent me to another specialist. Well, they ended up finding a callus on my vocal cord. It wasn't like big; it was small, but they put me through what they call vocal therapy, where they teach you, hey, when you're out talking on a Zoom set, because I'd been doing a lot of Zoom sessions at work.
mm-hmm,
Maybe that's what did it.
mm,
I don't know, because of coming out of the pandemic and everything. And and so they put me through vocal therapy, and then they gave me a warm up routine. So yeah, now I do the little thing where I blow some bubbles
the
and do a
bubbles,
little of
okay,
that. But
or voice
and
therapy.
what's interesting too is their little warm up routine involves you holding notes like
Yeah,
where you're holding them really quiet because they said that basically when you try to do it really quiet, that's where you need the absolute most control.
yeah,
And so I don't warm up loud like at
yeah, yeah,
all.
okay.
Um,
Mm,
you know, whereas I know some singers do, like Ralph from Primal Fear. He's a sweetheart of a man, incredible voice. He warms up. He's a loud singer, and he warms up
yeah, he's
really
very.
loud.
I know him also, and he's a loud singer, and he
Yeah,
he
I'm not a loud
confessed.
singer.
He almost confessed it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people will tell me, oh, you'll see comments, oh, his voice is so powerful. And I mean, I feel like my voice is reasonably powerful, but I'm not loud because I just
Mm,
can't. I can't be really loud. And I remember when we were on tour, we were up. I think we sound checked, right? And Ralph was sitting there at the bar. And when I came back after the sound check, he's like, so how are you singing? I'm like, well, I'm not really that loud, And I was like, we drank till the sunrise, rode away singing, Johnny's back again. I'm like, that's how loud I'm singing. And he's like, his eyes were like saucers because he's just like, oh my God, no wonder, no wonder why find it easier to keep your voice. And it's true. I mean, if you
yeah.
sing really loud, it's harder to keep your voice for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, there it's possible. I mean, it's possible, but for each sound you have an optimum of volume.
Hmm.
So it's also depend on the sound you want to produce and but
Yeah, and there's some notes I hit that are obviously going to be
yeah,
loud.
yeah,
Some of my head voice stuff, you're
yeah.
not going to hit those light.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
I know it. And I wanted also to have I have still a couple of questions uh, by people who are just listening to us. So one asked, "What memories do you have, and do you keep of your collaboration with Jack Star?" And was it, I don't know, would it have become a heavy metal singer if he hadn't crossed paths with Jack? I think you already answered since
yeah,
you were already singing heavy metal back then in the 80s,
yeah,
but
yeah.
and
What
uh
what I would credit Jack with is getting me back in, right? So in
okay.
'96, I stopped playing with my brother. And then around 2000, I was thinking I'd like to do something. And then when I
Hmm.
saw that Jack Star was looking for it and he was going to be on Manowar's record label, that's when I kind of sent in my CD. And actually, Joey DeMeo picked me to be in the band, not Jack.
Okay.
Um, and 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 so but yeah, I mean, all credit to Jack for, obviously he was willing to let me be in the band, to him and Joey for putting me in, because that's kind of what really got me on the trajectory of kind of actually being on it again,
Okay.
in it again. And I was basically about 40 years old, I think, when that happened. Actually, no, I was about 30, excuse me, 34. I remember going to meet Joey at Manowar in May of 2004. So I'm coming up on 20 years since that happened. And then um, so I do have really fond. Actually, you know what? I don't speak to Jack so much. I speak to Ned, the bass player, because he's a little more the gets things done guy, whereas
Okay.
Jack's the creative guy. And not that Ned's not, but I mean, every band needs a kind of a
Yeah.
business guy, and that's more Ned. I have fond memories. I would say probably the thing about Burning Star that's potentially frustrating when you're someone who likes to have creative input for me is
Okay.
I'm not in Florida. I'm in Michigan, they're in Florida. So he and Ned would basically write music, then they would send me stuff, and they would pretty much have vocal melodies and everything. I mean, I would make up some vocal melodies here and there, but for the large part, they'd have that and lyrics. And so what I would do is I'd just be finishing out some lyrics, but they'd be telling me what to sing. And so
Okay.
that part of it wasn't as happy. But I loved, we played some live shows here and there. It was fun. I would say it's not out of the realm that I would record with them again or even perform live with them again, because we're still friends. And the only reason I stopped is because it's just too hard for me to do both bands.
And I have two or three more questions.
Yeah.
So back on that The Voice thing.
Hmm.
So for people who haven't followed the story, you were part of that TV program, TV show. And I assume that during that TV show, you met a lot of people and maybe also met a lot of professionals. I mean, voice professional, maybe vocal coaches and how would you consider it to have did it bring something to you and to your experience? I mean, as a singer, what did you is there anything precise you think made a difference between the singer you were before and the singer you were afterwards?
I think that the difference for me is I went in there at an older age and with, pretty decent amount of experience performing live with Riot and having recorded quite a few albums by then.
Okay.
So I do remember Deborah Bird, who passed away recently, sweetheart of a woman. I remember for the beginning of, because I was telling her, like, look, Lou Gramm has more rasp in his voice than I do. And I do remember her telling me, well, so the beginning, standing in the rain, that part,
Mm,
I was singing it more like standing in the rain. And she's like, hey, try to be a little more like breathy with it. And she said, that'll make it sound raspy. So I do remember that, standing in the rain, something like that. I
yeah.
do remember her telling me that. There's another vocal coach who, like, once you get through and onto the show, then there's just one vocal coach for everyone. Her name's
Yeah.
Trelawney Rhodes. She's really knowledgeable, sweetheart woman. She gave me some nice warm-up stuff to use. But I don't really remember her ever giving me any
Okay.
sort of anything.
And
Uh,
the
Yeah.
experience
So
and
I
did
think for me, the things that I learned were more about TV production and the
oh
importance
yeah,
of thinking
that was
about, how,
also the sense of the question. That was
yeah,
also the
yeah.
meaning of the question.
Yeah, it's like, hey, you got 90 seconds to communicate this song. What do you want to
Oh yeah.
do? Okay, wait. No, you don't want to come out right away. Stand back at first. Now come forward. Okay, try to hit both sides of the stage. Try to.
Mm.
There was a little bit of that, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah,
So,
that must be really interesting. I mean, managing the stage presence and
yeah,
being
yeah.
able to do a lot in a minimum of time and to grasp the sight of the
Well, and I
people.
I think what it does, it opens your mind to, and you see it with bands, like, right, uh, like for me with Riot, I think for the most part, we just go out and jam. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we're not choreographed or any of that. But then there's an element to the show, and obviously, as somebody like a Taylor Swift, everything's choreographed and all this kind of,
Mm.
and I think there are some heavy metal bands, which, what's that German band that does all the fire and everything?
Rammstein.
Yeah, du hast me, whatever,
Yeah.
Rammstein. I mean, obviously bands like that really put on a show. And I think that's one of the things that kind of gave me a glimpse of that. Like, okay, there's a lot more to this than just going up and being a good musician and a good singer and
Yeah.
stuff.
Some could say that maybe they need a huge show because their songs can sound pretty, monolithic.
Yeah, yeah. Consistent. Yeah, yeah.
And but yes, I understand your point here. Um, One talks a lot these last years about the topic of mental health among musicians, because even when you are not fully professional, the context seems to be pretty hard. This question might be a bit more personal, but I think those who listen to us might be interested. Let's say you are a high-level singer in touring in an active band with a lot of international engagements. A family father, you also run a business. How do you manage to find a good life balance and avoid burning out?
I think I think what made a difference for me, and part of the reason I'm not such a great musician is, when I finished high school, I went and got a business degree, and I was like, I've always been scared to just rely solely on music, and so for me, it was a little more like I wanted to get myself established, and God chooses, helps people find different pathways. I'm not saying He chooses pathways for you, but I think He's there helping you and supporting your decisions, so to speak. And for me, I think in my life, what made sense was, or the way it turned out is, like I said, I was 34 when I got in Riot, excuse me, in Burning Star. Really didn't start playing live till 2008, or nine, and then
Yeah.
I got in Riot 2013. So a lot of this came later when I was very well established in my life and in my career.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and so I think what happened to me is, I put the emphasis on the front end of building my life and my career and everything. Now, the challenge is I'm also in a blessed situation. I work for a family business. I actually started here when 40 years ago this summer, really, when I was 14, but full time, I started here in 91, like 33 years ago, here at the end of April. And because of that, I have flexibility at work. I can get
Okay.
time away and stuff. Not everybody can do that. I mean, that's one of the toughest things about being in a band nowadays
Yeah.
is being able to get time away from work. Because a lot of times, if people leave, they're going to lose their job. And I think the other thing that helps is that Ride is not that big. Like I don't have to play that much. I
Yeah.
might
Okay.
lose 6, maybe 8 weeks a year, maybe 10 at the most. So it's kind of manageable for me. I can work it out. Whereas, you see those other bands, they're off on the road for 3 months and stuff like that. Yeah, that'd be real tough for me. For me,
Okay.
like I said, I did pull off that 30-day tour with Primal Fear back in 2018. It was kind of a bucket list item for me. But in general, with Riot, you go up maybe at the most for 2 weeks and then you come back home. Um,
Okay. But
and
still,
so,
there's a lot of things to do. I mean,
oh
uh,
yeah,
even if you have normal job, a normal family, and a normal band,
yeah,
it,
I have an understanding family. My wife
yeah.
is beyond understanding, and she supports me in what I do. And so, I look at a marriage as a partnership, and she's a stay-at-home mom and I work. So like I'm kind of taking care of the financial side of things. And then there's, you get the division of labor. I do certain things and she does
Yeah.
certain things. And
Uh,
and when I'm gone, and she's
uh,
taking care of the kids solely by herself, that's
but
that's her supporting me in it. So
I think that yeah, you laid the stress on something very important is that the to be able to have a, a complicated life, you must be stable. You, you
Well,
must be able
stable,
to you
yeah,
must
and supported by
yeah,
others.
and
You need
supported.
an
Yeah,
understanding family, even here at work. I mean, granted, I try to reward my employees really well, but the fact that I can leave and everything just stays running while I'm
mm,
gone, that's a sign that, my employees are really taking care of business, and I really appreciate them
yeah.
for that, you know.
Okay. Here's the last question I will ask you for today, and I really, really thank you for the time you gave me and us, I'd say. I often wonder why I spend so much time singing, while there might be more important things to do here under. And though I can't say singing is something that futile, I wanted to have your opinion about what makes singing important for you.
You know, I guess, I don't necessarily have the fantasy that I'm like changing the world. I mean, to me, there's like this intersection, there's these things that you're passionate about. Um, and I think in life, you need to have a good sense of purpose. And I think you can find more than one place to get it, but maybe you have one strong place for it. Um, for me, I get a lot of sense of purpose out of work and out of being a father and supporting my family. And then when it comes to music, it's tough. I mean, I'm like anybody. I have my dark days where I'm like, why do I bother? Why do I do this? And frankly, I spend more money on my music career than I make on it, for sure. I always jokingly tell people that it's my muscle car or whatever. You know how people will buy a car and they put 50,000 into it and it's worth 20,000, I mean,
Yeah.
that's my music career in a nutshell.
Uh,
But I think what makes the difference for me is, you know, and it's not a lot. Obviously, the people that I reach is really small numbers compared to a lot of other people. So there's really two things you have to keep in mind. One, I try to focus on my blessings, and the thing, don't focus on negative stuff. Second of all, I try not to compare myself. Not that I'm totally good at it, but I try not to compare myself to others because you can always find someone who's doing way better than you or reaching more people than you, and you can always find someone who's doing less. So just don't even worry about that. Just think about yourself and count your blessings. And then to me, when people reach out and they tell you that they found something you did really meaningful, part of me wonders, like, if I record a song and there's one person in the whole world that it really made a difference to, is that enough? Was it worth it?
oh yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
I
to
think
me,
you're right.
sure, why not?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, yeah.
Uh, I mean, obviously, it'd be great if there were a million people that really found some meaning in it. But I think that's the thing. And the other thing is, there's always people you're reaching. You have no idea. I mean, it just read YouTube comments. Granted, some people say bad stuff about you, but every now and then people pile on there about, God, I absolutely love Todd Michael Hall, and you're like, who's this? Who is this person? Like, you know.
Okay,
So
okay. So thank you very much again.
yeah, thank you.
It was a very, very nice interview with a lot of, mm, I mean, interesting and also encouraging stuff. So it was great to have you there. I really hope we can meet again and have a drink or two together,
I
and
hope so.
maybe uh, to sing a couple of Thunder Steel chorus together.
Yeah, yeah. Well, look at our tour. I see if you're close to any one of our shows. I
uh,
know we don't get to France,
Probably
but
no, but you go to Switzerland, but I'm probably going to your Swiss
oh,
gig.
nice.
Okay.
Well, then get ready to jump up on stage and sing some Thundersteel.
See you soon.
All right,
Cheers.
Arnold. Nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you too. Cheers.